Hello and welcome to the Robo Podcast. We're glad to have you. Today we're doing a deep dive into something kind of fascinating, something that creeps into, well, almost everything these days. Have you ever been talking about something simple, right? Like electric cars or even light bulbs, and suddenly it's it's political.
Oh, absolutely. It happens constantly. You see it pop up with plant-based meats, definitely vaccines during the pandemic,
Mhm.
even things like energy-efficient appliances, reusable shopping bags, and yeah, believe it or not, gas stoves became a whole thing.
Exactly. These are just products, technologies, habits. How on earth do they get tangled up with our political identity?
That's the big question, isn't it? And that's really our mission for this deep dive. We're going to unpack the ideas in the source material, identity politics, and perception sway. Try to get underneath the psychology of why our political tribe, our sort of team affiliation, starts coloring our opinions on things that seem totally unrelated.
Yeah, because we like to think we're rational, right? That we make choices based on facts, pros and cons.
That's the common assumption. I look at the specs, I check the reviews, I weigh the costs, then I decide.
But the source material, it really challenges that. It suggests that, especially now, with so much information flying around, pure objective reason, maybe not our default setting.
Right. It's not saying we can't be rational, but our minds are also heavily, heavily influenced by our social needs. The need to belong, to feel good about our group.
Okay, so that need to belong is key. How does that work psychologically? The source gets into some specific concepts, starting with social identity theory.
Yes, exactly. Henri Tajfel's work is central here.
Mhm.
Social identity theory basically says a big chunk of our self-esteem, our sense of who we are, comes from the groups we belong to.
Like our family, our job.
Fans of a sports team, yeah. And for a lot of people, their political party or movement is a really strong group identity.
So my identity gets wrapped up in the group's identity.
Precisely. And because you want to feel good about yourself, you want to feel good about your group, so you start adopting the group's way of looking at the world. It's not just the big political ideas, it's the culture, the signals, the tastes, even what you buy or don't buy.
So if my political team seems to look down on, say, EVs, maybe through the media figures they follow or just the general vibe.
You might start internalizing that negativity yourself, almost unconsciously. It becomes part of showing you belong, that you're loyal. Less about the car, more about the tribe.
It becomes a symbol, not just transportation.
Exactly. And that ties right into the next big psychological piece the source talks about, motivated reasoning.
Ah, yeah. Ziva Kunda's idea. We're not exactly neutral processors of information, are we?
Definitely not. Motivated reasoning is this idea that we don't just absorb facts neutrally. Our goals, our desires, especially the desire to confirm what we already believe or what our group believes, shape how we seek out and interpret information.
So let's go back to the EV example. If my identity group has sort of coded EVs as, I don't know, part of some agenda I don't like.
Then your brain isn't going to look at articles about battery life or charging speeds objectively. It's going to subconsciously highlight the negative stuff. You'll notice the stories about range anxiety or the cost or mining issues, and the positive stuff about fuel savings or performance. It doesn't stick as much. It doesn't fit the preferred story.
Your brain is basically working to prove itself right, to stay aligned with the group feeling.
That's the core idea. And the source material points to some pretty solid evidence for this, like that 2017 study by Dan Kahan and others.
In nature, human behavior, right. What did that show?
It was quite clever. They gave people numerical data, actual numbers, related to hot-button issues like gun control or climate change. The task was just basic data interpretation.
Okay.
What they found was wild. People's ability to correctly interpret the exact same numbers depended on their political views. If the correct interpretation supported their group's typical stance, they were much better at getting it right.
Wow, wait, so it wasn't just about disagreeing on what to do about the numbers. It was about seeing the numbers themselves differently.
Effectively, yes. Their political identity was influencing their basic factual interpretation. That's a really clear demonstration of motivated reasoning in action. It shows how deep this stuff goes.
Okay, that's sobering. And it seems like this leads into another concept the source mentions, affective polarization. Sounds emotional.
It is. Affective polarization isn't just disagreeing on policy anymore. It's that growing feeling of actual dislike, distrust, even contempt for people on the other side.
Moving from your idea is bad to you as a person are bad, or maybe even dangerous.
Exactly. And research, like the 2019 study by Iyengar and others that the source cites, shows this animosity has been rising sharply, particularly in the U.S. People increasingly view the opposing party not just as competitors, but as a genuine threat to the nation or their way of life.
That creates a really intense us versus them dynamic, and I can see how, in that climate, everyday objects could get caught in the crossfire.
Absolutely. When the distrust is that high, things that should be neutral become weapons in the culture war. If EVs get strongly branded as liberal,
Mm-hmm.
then rejecting them becomes a way for someone on the right to signal, I'm not one of them. It's tribal signaling.
Precisely. It's about identity defense, not just practicality. And the source notes the same thing happened with gas stoves, right? They became a symbol of tradition, of freedom from perceived government overreach for some conservatives.
So owning one or defending the right to own one became a statement. Less about BTU output, more about cultural identity.
That product gets loaded with meaning way beyond its function.
And our modern media landscape, the source argues, just pours fuel on this fire, doesn't it? With algorithms and echo chambers.
Massively. It's a huge accelerant. Think
Yeah.
about your social media feed. The algorithms are designed to give you more of what you already like and agree with, right? To keep you scrolling.
Yeah, keeps you engaged. So if you click on stuff that fits your political identity, you just get fed more and more of that. It reinforces your views, and it can filter out anything that challenges them. You end up in this bubble, this echo chamber.
And dedicated partisan news outlets often do the same thing, right? Crafting stories that really hit those emotional buttons for their specific audience.
Definitely. They provide narratives that make sense of the world through that partisan lens, often simplifying things into good guys versus bad guys. The source uses the COVID-19 vaccine rollout as a really stark example of this.
That was impossible to miss. You had this broad scientific agreement, but vaccination rates, they split dramatically along political lines in many countries.
Yeah, research confirmed that, like a 2021 paper in Science. It wasn't really about different access to the science itself. It was about how political leaders and media narratives framed the perception of the vaccine. For some people, getting vaccinated or not getting vaccinated became tangled up with trust in government, political figures, specific media outlets. It became an identity marker, separate from the health calculation.
And the plant-based meat thing you mentioned earlier, same dynamic.
Very similar, according to the source. Some media outlets framed it not just as food, but as like an elitist attack on traditional lifestyles or farming.
So rejecting it wasn't just about taste preference.
For some consumers, it became about rejecting the perceived cultural enemy associated with it, resisting something symbolic.
Okay, so we've got this deep psychological wiring for group identity. We've got motivated reasoning twisting facts. We've got polarization making us dislike each other, and media fanning the flames. It sounds pretty bleak. Are we just stuck? Does the source offer any way out, any strategies to fight this in ourselves?
Thankfully, yes. It doesn't just diagnose the problem. The first and maybe the most crucial step is simply self-awareness.
Just noticing it.
Noticing it and questioning it. When you have that instant negative reaction to something, a product, an idea, even news about a person, pause. Ask yourself honestly, why am I reacting this way? Is it based on the actual merits, or is it because it feels linked to that other group I don't like?
That takes real effort, though, to interrogate your own gut feeling.
It absolutely does. It's not automatic. The second piece of advice from the source is to actively seek out diverse information. Break the echo chamber.
Easier said than done sometimes.
True. But it means intentionally reading news from sources you normally wouldn't. Following people online who have different perspectives. Even just talking, really talking, to people you disagree with, trying to understand their reasoning, not just win the argument.
Get exposed to different narratives.
Exactly. It helps you see that your group's perspective isn't the only one out there. Okay, third suggestion. Focus on evidence and personal experience where you can.
Get back to basics.
Sort of. Instead of just going with the cultural vibe or the group narrative, try to evaluate things on facts and, importantly, your own direct experience if possible.
So with the EV, instead of just accepting the label liberal toy or whatever, actually look up independent reviews. Find real owner experiences. Test drive one if you can.
Right. Judge the car as a car. Judge the plant-based burger on its taste and nutrition, not on who you think eats it. Separate the thing from the political baggage.
Makes sense. Awareness, diverse info. Focus on evidence. What's the last one?
The last one is maybe the hardest, especially now. Practice intellectual humility.
Oof. Yeah. Meaning
Accepting that you don't know everything. That your group, whatever group you identify with, doesn't have a monopoly on truth or good ideas. It's being willing to entertain the possibility that you might be wrong. Or that the other side, even if you disagree with them 90% of the time, might have a valid point on this one thing, or might have information you haven't considered.
That feels like swimming upstream against the polarization current.
It really is. It's a conscious pushback against that tribal instinct to just dismiss everything associated with the opposition. But the source suggests it's vital. This humility opens the door to actual learning and prevents our identities from completely walling off our minds.
So wrapping up this deep dive, it seems the core message from the source is that political identity is powerful. It shapes us, which isn't inherently bad. But when it bleeds over into judging everything else, cars, food, technology, science based on tribal lines, that's where we get into trouble.
Yeah, it really distorts our judgment, narrows our world. We might miss out on good ideas, useful products, or just accurate information because it got branded with the wrong political label.
But the path forward, suggested by the source, involved conscious effort. Being aware of our biases, deliberately seeking out different views, grounding ourselves in evidence and experience, and trying to cultivate that intellectual humility, that openness to being wrong.
Those practices can help us keep our thinking clearer, evaluate things more fairly, and maybe, just maybe, help build a few bridges across those divides. It keeps curiosity alive.
Thanks for listening today, and if you enjoyed this segment, think about one product or idea you've dismissed recently and throw it in the comments. Could political identity have played a role? Consider subscribing and stay curious, stay open.